Oh shit. Here we go again.
Hello, I am back for the exciting conclusion of my My Little Pony redesign series. If the big 2 on the thumbnail didn't clue you in, this is a part 2 of another video I made a few months ago redesigning the other half of the main 6. While I wouldn't say you need to watch the other one first to understand the contents of this video, it would make me very happy if you did, considering it kind of flopped in general. I had intended to have this video out sooner, but the job I was working at the time made it less convenient that in a declining interest in this project, which you're going to hear about a lot in this video. I apologize in advance. Thank you for all the support I did get in the last video, but that's pretty much all, so let's get into the video. Applejack has always been a character very near and dear to my heart, not because she was my favorite character necessarily, but because she was the character that everyone around me would point to and say, "You're her, you're Applejack." And while that might have just been my family/friends trying to nicely tell me I'm a boring basic ass bitch, on my more recent attempt to finish the series, Applejack really stuck out to me as the better character, similar to what I've heard from other people on their rewatches. I honestly think it's because as a character, AJ just had far less blaring character flaws, and when they're brought to light, it usually just circles back to endearing, at least for me anyway. Like being so honest about your own thoughts just because you were told that you just shit on everyone else by accident. Honestly, that's iconic and so me. I've seen a lot of other designs give AJ more features from her mom, like her curly hair texture or that type of girly girl cottagecore vibe, but all of those features just seem incredibly not Applejack's vibe, and if anything, those would be themes and ideas I'd be more likely to put into an Apple Bloom redesign if anything, since she's more traditionally girly than her sister. What I've also seen that I think is very fun is people giving her her family's shawl, largely since I believe it was brought up more than once, and she has it post-finale, which I think is really sweet and makes sense for AJ, but I really just couldn't make it work for mine. Then I think her hat works better as a tie back to her family and parents. Now that I've gone through everything I didn't include, let's talk about what I did. I wanted Applejack to have a build more similar to her older brother Big Macintosh. She's a working horse after all. She's in the fields, bucking apples and shit. She's gotta be strong and sturdy. Along with the idea of being a working horse, for some reason my brain was really attached to giving her some kind of harness. I don't know what purpose it could serve her other than vibes. I don't know, but I like how it ended up looking. I wasn't planning on giving her a braid initially. While it was definitely in my head as an option, but I was planning on giving her just her ponytail when I got to her hair. Just thought it suited the design really well. It's practical and cute, and also gives nods to the classic cowgirl aesthetic. Kept her tail really short for that practicality that was missing in her hairstyle. However, something I was intending to add from the beginning was her bandana. I honestly don't have much to say about it. It just seemed like another natural addition to her design based on the themes that already existed. Applejack's cutie mark in its original form is not giving core 6, it's giving background character, so I spruced it up with a horseshoe for reasons I honestly can't remember at this point because it's been so long since I drew these. Possibly just having to do with her apple bucking, which is done with her legs/hooves, or just a general farm life, or just to do general farm life. I was already a pretty big fan of AJ's color palette as is. Despite its simplicity, I leaned more toward earthy tones while still keeping the colors recognizable. With her coat pattern, the subtlest nod to a farmer's tan, making her mane/tail blonde rather than just yellow. Either way, I really like how the Applejack redesign turned out. It ended up very cohesive and balanced. I'm very proud of the illustration itself. And I'm only patting myself on the back this much because I'm genuinely disappointed with my results for the last 2 redesigns. But for right now, let's just enjoy this result. I went into this redesign with the hopes of making Twilight's princesshood more strikingly obvious. I wanted to also draw a pre-Princess Twilight, but I was kind of running out of steam on this project by her. I implemented a lot of elements I've seen from other redesigns, like changing the horn's color and length similar to G5's way of drawing unicorns/alicorns, giving her a taller stature, which she does technically have, but I wanted to make it more dramatic. Not that it would be super obvious without another character to compare her to. Overall, I'm not super happy with Twilight's stature, but when I drew Twilight, I was getting back into the redesigns after a multi-month break on the project by the power of pure ADHD procrastination, so in general I was a bit rusty with drawing ponies and I didn't feel super confident drawing Rainbow Dash yet, which I'll get into why in more detail later on. As a kid, I definitely always liked Twilight the least, which is probably due from the Mary Soonis nature of her character, which only really got worse once she'd earned her wings, and most of her unsightly flaws seemed to be in the past. That, and I think I just really didn't like the nerdy/intellectual characters as a kid overall. I liked them stupid. Still do, if I'm being honest. Like Rarity, I wanted to give Twilight the classical unicorn look. Originally, I wanted to make the tail hair the same blunt cut that her mane was, but it ended up just looking kind of odd to me, so I settled for a more general paintbrush type of look. As for her hair, I kept her canon style largely the same, minus a small updo with star clip, since I wanted to have more star imagery on her design in general, hence why I tried to make her eyes subtle, but not so subtly, star-shaped, along with literal star pupils, lavender town style. But speaking of hair accessories, I forgot her crown, just straight up forgot it. And I know she technically doesn't wear a crown for the majority of her princesshood, but I really feel like it would have added to her otherwise plain Jane design. Like after she rose to alicornhood, I feel like it should have warranted a stronger change than a pair of wings and a growth spurt. I'd be more mad at this mistake if I didn't have another change to her design, one that I would consider only appearing as she gained princesshood, though it may make more logical sense if she was born with this part. Alright, no more dancing around the point. I'm of course referring to her dragony hindquarters, which I added for literally just the reason that I wanted to make more diversity among the species. Yeah, I know it's My Little Pony, but man, the same mold pasted 6 times is boring as a redesigner. I genuinely feel like I could have gone harder on the dragon theming, but I feel like with the lack of connection to anything in canon, it made it feel like I was low-key pulling the idea out of my ass, or by rule of cool even, and Twilight is not cool. While I know technically Rarity is the one with glasses in the main 6, but Rarity seems to only use them to be reading glasses, so my idea is that Twilight will be wearing glasses since she was a filly, kind of like a certain moon dancer, or a certain Side-Twi even. She definitely could cast some kind of spell to repair or improve her vision, but her glasses would almost become sentimental to her, or some kind of display of imperfection to the people of Equestria, or a reminder that she's just a pony, or whatever, since that theme just seems to come up a lot. Don't come at me with the straps. I know they don't make any sense. I just wouldn't make the ugly star change. I followed the pretty common consensus of adding yellow to her mane for pretty much the same reason that everyone else does. Contrast. It looks nice in the rainbow power, and of course it literally matches her namesake of Twilight. But I also wanted to make her coat darker and more easy to read as nighttime. I think her original mane reads as that well enough, but I felt her coat could definitely work with an earthier violet. I wanted to make more changes to Twilight's cutie mark, but every change I could think of didn't really work. I thought of adding a book or a scroll, but reading didn't seem like more of an interest to her rather than a purpose. Even if I know she did earn her wings by finishing a spell in the show, I couldn't really think of a way to make friendship be a part of it, so I really only had magic to fall back on as a concept, so I added more abstract shapes and ended up calling it a day, more or less. Everything comes down to this. The character that gave me the most grief on this project, the one that single-handedly delayed this whole ass project for so much longer than it should have been. And it's all because of one design element. That and there was too many good options to the point that I just kind of said, fuck it, throw everything on there. Like, you remember how I said Twilight shouldn't operate in the rule of cool? If anyone should, it's this motherfucker. Affectionate. While I know Rainbow is kind of the opposite of all things emo, I feel like culturally she was such a symbol for a bunch of alt communities. So of course, Fringe goes on ahead. I feel like Rainbow's gender really easily is read one way or another. Small aggro butch lesbian, or overconfident T-boy with T-boy swag. I chose the latter, so my version of Rainbow Dash for my own insanity uses the pronouns he, him, which I will continue to use for the duration of this commentary. One of my decisions with this redesign, strong air quotes, because it almost looks more like that meme where you draw the character canon accurate as possible, and then you draw them with your own style and headcanons. It's almost like I did that second half there, but let's not sit on that for too long. I wanted to make him fluffy with the wings and chest being very cloud-like since he's from Cloudsdale. No Fluttershy is too, but I don't feel like she really ever connected with him like Dash definitely did. And I wanted to keep him short and small since everything about Rainbow Dash screams ankle biter to me, but still with more of a square muzzle, because damn, that pony tee is working for him. Forks him over my way, Twilight, and I do have a bit of deeper reasoning for switching Dash's gender identity. AJ and Rainbow have always been the most masked or tomboyish of the girls, and in a lot of redesigns they'll gender swap one or both of them. And while I'm all for that good old butch for butch simping that I guess got confirmed in the last episode more or less, but either way, both of these tomboyish characters meant a lot to me as a kid because that was how I grew up, and I now, as a homegrown trans mask, it just feels full circle to make one of them trans mask, and I feel like Applejack suits the butch aesthetic more. Even if I know in the age up Rainbow Dash looks literally like Ellen DeGeneres. That and in my heart, Rarity married Applejack, not Rainbow Dash, because fuck you, I guess. But getting back into the redesign, I gave him goggles around his neck since that is an accessory he wears from time to time in the show, and I would like to imagine he'd like the ability to go from 0 to 100 whenever, so I feel like realistically the aviator style goggles should be a permanent staple on the design. Speaking of elements that feel more realistic, hearing aids can't be breaking the sound barrier without some kind of repercussion. And yeah, I brought up the fact that the poor vision could probably be repaired with magic, but also I don't have a counter argument for that. Maybe Rainbow just didn't want his body messed with by anyone in such a permanent way. I don't really know. In the long run, the logical reason doesn't really matter. Another detail I really like seeing is when people have nods to Rainbow Dash's unflattering childhood nickname of Rainbow Crash. And while I could have given him some scars, I opted for bandaging on the back legs, maybe from hitting the ground a bit too hard too many times in the way that a Pegasus body just wasn't really meant to do, as well as one across nose, even if it can't really bullshit a reason as to why it would really be there. On the front legs, he has these magenta armbands. I honestly think I was just grasping at straws to keep the sporty vibe. That, I'm pretty sure, is Equestria Girl's equivalent, had at least a sweatband initially. I tried to make his tail kind of lightning bolt shaped. You can tell me how successful I was at that. I also tried to extend Rainbow's cutie mark further down the flank, but much more further, and it just looked odd to me. All in all, Rainbow's cutie mark ended up largely just being the same as in canon, with some extra clouds to make it look more like the actual sonic rain boom that was the cause for him of gaining his cutie mark in the first place. While this may be a bit controversial, considering almost every redesign seems to be a drastic overhaul of Rainbow Dash's color palette, I personally feel like it's kind of important to keep the rainbow hair, considering that's like half of his namesake. I will admit to desaturating the colors some, especially with the coat. I was going for stormy sky rather than sunny blue, since rainbows are known to appear after storms. That, and I really do like the look of a more neutral color paired with the whole rainbow, while also not wanting to make the coat black or white to step on Rarity's toes or hoofs. I struggled a lot with Rainbow's color for this redesign, going back and forth on color, and one other idea I desperately wanted to implement. stripes, which is another common design element I've seen on some redesigns of this character, and I thought it looked cool. But honestly, I couldn't tell if it genuinely suited my design or not, so I didn't decide. I made two. And that's it. That's all of them. All 6 of the main 6. My first mini redesign series is over. How exciting! It's been great working on this project for what seems to be selfishly just for my own inner child, but if you also got a bit of enjoyment out of either of my videos, thank you. And please consider subscribing for more art and shenanigans in the future.